I've been talking with a lot of our clients over the last week and a half or 2 weeks or so, just to try to get a cross section of what different observations people are making and also kind of different approaches. So some of this might be kind of master of the obvious kind of stuff, but I'm hoping that maybe it at least provides a few ideas. And then kind of for the second half of it, our goal is to give you guys a sense of, are there some things that we can do to maybe make your guys a little bit easier, or hopefully here by the end you'll have some ideas and suggestions as well. So, obviously there's only so much that any of us can do, but so that the idea here is to at least, share some ideas and then also share some ideas with us about what can we do that might help you guys kind of navigate what is a problem. So that's all right. So here's kind of a summary of the things that we have observed so far. The first thing here is that it's affecting everybody, like everyone's kind of in the same boat. So there's a little bit of an opportunity to grab some market share potentially for you guys, i.e., as the saying goes, never let a good crisis go to waste. So depending on your inventory position, you might be able to apply this into maybe a long-term positive, even though it's definitely a short-term negative. That's kind of item number one. We'll talk about that a little bit. Obviously, demand is going to be highly variable. A lot of you are telling us already that you're seeing jumps as people are trying to stock up, and then there will probably be some associated dips. Also, it's a great time to use the inventory that you have, so pull it from different sites. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then it's also a very good time that you might need to cull out some of the weakest things in your portfolio, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. A lot of you are just flat out hitting the pause button, especially on China that has that like 100 and whatever % tariff. So there's some upsides and downsides to that. This is maybe one of those master of the obvious statements, but moving to other suppliers. And then if there's any like inter-country warehouse network games that you might be able to play, this one you guys might actually have to educate me a little bit because I didn't see how that would work, but we'll come back to that one. So here's kind of the first thing in terms of if you can think a little bit more strategically long-term, this might be an opportunity to raise market share. So especially because of the timing, a lot of you that are importing a lot from Asian countries like China and Vietnam, hopefully you've already been stocking up a little bit or have a lot of stock left over from Chinese New Year. If you're already in a really strong stock position, you have an opportunity to maybe delay when you do your price increases and try to grab some market share from your competitors where they might do that increase sooner rather than later. And now you can maybe capture some customers that are shopping around for the lowest prices sort of in the interim. So it's a little bit of a different situation where if you're just arbitrarily trying to raise your prices to maybe capture a bit more margin, right now, everyone is probably going to have to do it at some point or another. So there might be a strategic opportunity there that is worth investigating among your group. So I've definitely heard that from a few folks here over the past few weeks. Next thing to talk about is going to be the variability of demand. So this is not universal, but I've already talked to at least half a dozen people that have said they're starting to see a pretty strong increase in demand or even order sizes. So a couple things about that. One, if you are seeing those, maybe that's good, although I've also the same people saying that they're maybe going to limit order sizes to whatever your normal monthly demand is, so that you don't get a huge run on your inventory and then you're out and then you kind of have no flexibility to adjust here in the future, especially if you're pausing buys on inventory from China. So a couple things, like if we're fast forwarding 3-4 months into the future, if the good news that you have is that StockIQ isn't basing your safety stock recommendations purely on demand variability, as you may remember. It's always based on your forecast error. So if StockIQ is able to kind of see and account for some of this error, then you're not going to see some huge increase in your safety stock values as a result of some short-term demand increases and demand variability. So just kind of be aware of that. That's a spot where you guys are already kind of in a good position. Especially related to that, if you do see some short-term bumps in demand or also some short-term dips, this is a time where you want to be thinking, I'm going to put some events in the history of that item to make sure that the algorithm is fully aware that, hey, there was kind of a world event here, and we're not expecting to see this 300% change on an ongoing basis, and you can attenuate some of those up or downward effects using the events in the forecast module if you want to. So just kind of a reminder on that one for you guys. All right, next thing, using the inventory that you have. This is where, just again, kind of a reminder of the tools that you have. Use the StockIQ substitutes feature as much as you're able. That's the one where we're going to try to highlight for you, where you can get inventory from other locations to avoid purchasing more, if you can possibly do that. Also, it might be a good time to go and do a look at the inventory balancing screen, whose job is to try to find excess at locations where you don't need it. and get it to locations where you do. One customer, he made the joke. It's like, yeah, I don't have excess anymore. I have tariff insurance. So I thought that was kind of funny and worth including here. So anyway, any excess that you have or inventory at other locations where it's slower moving than where you might otherwise use it, definitely it's a good time to use that if you can, as the situation kind of develops, because as we've seen, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow or the next day and so on in terms of all those rates. That was kind of to take advantage of what you've got. So on the other end of things, this is a very good time to go and do that SKU rationalization process. It may very well be like a lot of these larger tariff rates. If you're going to have 154% price increase, you may find that customers just aren't willing to absorb any or any significant portion of that. And so it may be that some of these slower moving or lower margin items you simply just need to remove from your catalog. So we'll come back to this a little bit later when we talk about how we think we might be able to support you guys. But if you're looking at weak performing items and what it just doesn't make sense to bring in again from China or some of the harder hit countries, this is a great time just to say, you know what, we're going to sell through what we've got, and we just aren't going to bring any more of these C's and D's that are particularly hard hit. So one thing I'll be curious about when we get kind of the discussion portion is how often you guys are doing this kind of thing anyway, and if you're already looking at what must we still bring in and what are we going to not bring in for a while because it simply isn't as business critical and we can't justify it. To that end, many of you that I've talked to are just hitting the pause button primarily on China. I spoke to somebody yesterday that they say they get 80% of their goods by value out of Chinese factories, and they just canceled every PO that they have for the foreseeable future until they see kind of what develops. There's a bit of upside and downside to that. Maybe just, are you going to lose factory capacity, or are you going to have to, just start over on the lead time clock? But if you truly believe that you cannot sell anything that you'd have to buy at that higher rate, certainly just pausing for a while is the right call. So to that end, because then the next question is, how long can I get away with that? We created a custom report that we can provide to everyone that wants it, which is basically answering the question, how long do I have until I stock out if I do nothing? I sort of flippantly said the term in the past. There's a number in StockIQ that you'll see in different places. It's called the projected actual available. For example, it's in the order schedule for individual products. And basically that is, what will happen if I dropped dead today? How long before this product would run out if I placed no new purchase orders, no forecast changes, no nothing. So this report makes use of that data and kind of simplifies it into one report where you can just see this product at this warehouse will run out on this day. And so if you are considering just a pause on orders from some or all of your suppliers, we can install that for you guys in the custom report module. And then you'll have just a nice starting point, at least for an analysis of, okay, how long can I hold off from some of these different vendors? Because it's a custom report, if you need us to tailor it a little bit for your situation, for example, the folks I spoke to yesterday said, hey, we have a very strong hub spoke model. We only want to do this for the stuff coming from China. So can you make sure that it would show that for all products in all of our spokes, regardless of, only for the ones that are coming from China? So we can tailor those for you guys a little bit, but hopefully that will be useful for you here in the next couple of weeks as a tool to kind of start some analysis. Next thing, obviously this is a little bit of master of the obvious, like if you can move a purchase out of China or a highly tariffed country, do so. One thing that I thought was kind of interesting that one person posed is that they found that they had a domestic supplier alternate for that same product, that supplier was just a much larger purchaser than they are. And so they are purchasing the product at a much lower cost. So their cost on the product is quite low relative to what they were sourcing it directly from their vendor. I'm not sure why that was. So their approach was to move their purchases to the domestic supplier, and who then is paying the same percentage, but they're via lower price. And then that was decreasing how much they were going to have to increase the price that they were passing along to the customer. So I don't know how custom of a scenario that is, but that was maybe a scenario that could be helpful for you guys, and just an idea that I thought was worth passing on.
Jake, there was one question about your sort of the burn down report. Is that available now in customer reports, or is it best to have somebody create a ticket to have somebody put that in? What's the most efficient way to get them out there?
Yeah, that's a ticket kind of thing. So for anyone that wants it, that's we go in there, we run a little bag of SQL, and then it will show up in that screen for you. It's not just a ta-da, everybody has it now. So if you would like it, just like send in a support ticket, probably the best way. We sort of prompted it.
Says we found that some of our China suppliers have locations in other countries. So that might be something to investigate. I actually, frankly, would not even have thought of that. I would have just thought they were only in China, but maybe they have a sister and a brother in other areas.
Yeah, exactly. Like if there are factories, even if it's for the same vendor, but they're located in a different country, then that might be a good trick. One of the things that it's sort of I've learned here over the last couple of days is that regardless of where the supplier actually is located, the important piece is what is the country of origin associated with that product. So if your vendor is in fact in Vietnam or something, and you can call the product country of origin Vietnam, then yeah, you can definitely take advantage of the lower rate that Vietnam has, at least for today. So here are the things that we think might be helpful for you guys based on these conversations. This is very much, at the end here when we open it up, I want to get a feeling for yay, nay, or, that kind of thing. So two sides to this problem, right? One of them is the supply side of, my cost of goods is going through the roof, but also the demand side, because presumably, some non-zero amount, you have to increase your pricing, and then therefore what is going to happen to demand as a result of that. So that's kind of the way that we're looking at this. So here's the first thing that we wanted to do, and this is very low tech, but hopefully helpful. We just want to give you the ability to provide that country of origin information to us in StockIQ. So like I said a moment ago, we can already tell, or you can already tell us what country is a given supplier in, but that doesn't necessarily tell you what is the country of origin of that product. So it might be one-to-one a lot of the time, but we're going to add a field to one of our data feeds where you can tell us by supplier and item combo what is the country of origin for a product. And so thereby you'll be able to see that information in the place order screen as a column. There's some arguments for where we might be able to include a little table in step one for, this supplier has 50% China, 25% Vietnam, 10% Malaysia, whatever it might be. And so that'd be one place to add that information, as well as going back to my recommendation on some SKU rationalization. If you're trying to figure out what do we need to get rid of, let's go look at our C and D items from China, if that's the ones that we need to kind of think about discontinuing. And so hopefully that makes that whole process easier and less effort for you guys. Similarly, if you've got the country of origin, we could add some options for, let me do the container loading by country of origin if you have a supplier that has products with multiple countries of origin, as well as doing the order numbering so that you can just know, all right, everything on this PO that has China country of origin, everything on this is Vietnam, everything on this is Malaysia, and so on. So that's just kind of a help for visibility in the application, if you will. The second one that would go right beside that is adding a field for being able to tell us what is the total. I wrote here import duty percentage. I think maybe just like an import tax rate might be a better name for the field. But the idea is if we can use that to calculate for you the landed cost of the product, then that will help know when you're sort of in danger here of having some negative margins. So if we start with your supplier cost and add whatever the tariff rate is plus any other duties plus maybe a factor for freight, like maybe 3% or something for freight, now we know what your landed cost is going to be, and we can display that as well in place order screen. And some of you may be aware, not too long ago we added a feature that we call the adjusted margin in place order screen, where it will look for, based on what you're proposing to buy, as well as how long you'll have to hold that product, are you potentially at risk here of negative margin, of losing money on that product. And so we would probably update that same existing alert to be based on landed cost information instead of just right now it's based on the supplier cost. And so now you could know, like, hey, I might have been making money before, but now this thing is 50 or 100% more expensive. Comparing that to my sell price, I would like it now if the application could warn me about those. Hopefully that's more like a warning. You guys have already done some of that analysis beforehand, but it seemed like it might be a nice thing to have some awareness of. So those are some of the simpler, very quick wins that we could get out to you guys here just in the next couple of kind of call it days to weeks. So that was some of the first things that we were thinking of that we could assist with. This one is on the demand side. So if you are going to have to go make some pricing changes, then presumably that will lead to changes in demand. And how much that is sort of depends on what industry you're in. But kind of the goal here is that we're trying to avoid you guys having to put in a whole bunch of manual forecasts, because then you're sort of losing that reactivity, or now you're kind of having this big manual workload of having to adjust that. So what we're sort of knocking around here is it'd be really great to have the ability to allow you to kind of put some kind of pressure one way or the other on the statistical model. Just say, hey, I need you to drop this by 10% over the next 5 months, and allow you guys to do a start date and end date, that kind of thing. There's already a similar feature in StockIQ called model adjustments that we might modify to sort of suit this end. But sort of the goal was basically this idea of allowing you guys just to apply some pressure in one direction or another on the stat models without having to resort to manual forecasts. And certainly interested in feedback on that front. So that's certainly a direct way of making some changes. Probably the most sophisticated thing that we've been thinking about, and this is a little bit longer term, is introducing what we call price elasticity modeling to StockIQ. For those of you that met Todd Morley at the user conference, that's something that he did some of in his past life when he was building some of his machine learning based tools. And so he has some expertise in this, and we've had some discussions. So kind of like I said a moment ago, all of you are going to experience demand elasticity to a different degree based on your industry. Certain luxury or optional goods, will probably experience more of a drop. Things like medicines and food will probably experience less of a drop. And so there are kind of some known, somewhat industry standard price elasticity curves that we could bundle with StockIQ to at least give you guys a starting point. And the idea here is that we would give you a new screen within the forecast module to allow doing a bit of simulation with those curves in mind, and then decide, or once you've decided what you're going to do, there's already in StockIQ a data feed where you can give us your planned future pricing as well as planned or known supplier pricing changes. And so the net result of all this would be, if you say, okay, we're going to do a 20% price increase, and that's going to happen in June, then if StockIQ had that data, it could continue forecasting and then adjust its predictions based on the knowledge that demand will go down as the price increases. And the same would be true for the future. Like, let's fast forward a year or two. If you're like, hey, we need to drop our price, and then we'd be able to model the increase in demand as a outcome of the price decrease as well. So this would be a very nice long-term feature anyway, that I think would just be helpful for the moment as well. So that's kind of from simple to more advanced, the ideas that we have. So that's kind of the end of sort of the ideas that I wanted to kind of throw out at you guys, just to kind of, stir the pot a little bit. I was curious what other questions and problems you guys are facing, and thought I'd sort of open the floor from here to see what considerations you guys are making, or anything else that you might find helpful as you try to kind of navigate this problem.